Danny, I previously stated that I was highly bored with plugins, and I still am. I want to have a discussion with you about plugins, where we're at with plugins at the moment, and whether you are equally as bored, or whether you are still one of the most excited people I know when it comes to a new plugin. Because what will happen on a regular basis is I'll get a voice note from you. Paul, have you checked out this?
3 a.m. usually.
I check out this new plugin. Oh, it's brilliant. It's changed my life. And then what I'll do is, half the time I won't check it out because it just bores me.
Yeah.
The plugin, not you.
Yeah.
But a week later, you'll come back to me and I'll say, oh, Danny, how's that plugin that changed your life?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not using it anymore.
Sometimes it's not a week later. Sometimes it's 2 hours later.
Sometimes you'll send it to me at 3 a.m. By 7 a.m, when I wake up, you've sent me another message. Oh, don't worry about checking that out. It's rubbish.
I know. You know what it is? I get excited. I'm a very spontaneous person, and I get excited about stuff over the top, like the littlest things in life. Like, I'm very grateful for anything that comes my way. So even a plugin, I get so excited. Well, I used to, actually. I'll come back to that. I used to get so excited, and to the point where even if I saw a review, let's say on YouTube, like for a plugin, even though I know I could demo it first for 14 days, I wouldn't even do that. I would just take that risk and I would buy the plugin. And you know what? I've spent thousands over the years, many thousands on plugins. Dare I say 5 figures? Probably.
5 figures.
Probably over the years.
Yeah.
Probably.
UAD plugins.
Yeah, I would say so. And like you, I am bored stiff of plugins.
How many plugins do you think you use?
Okay, I could probably tell you. I could literally tell you.
Could you put it on
easily
2 hands? Say
probably 1 hand. So I can tell you now. So I on my system, and that's the ones I've even bothered installing on my latest Mac. On my system, I have thousands and thousands. I've bought, honestly, maybe 10,000 plus. That's how much, right? I use
10,000 plus.
Maybe. I'm not sure, but it's something stupid like that.
Well,
thousands.
Even if they all cost $29 or something.
Yeah, absolute fortune. I spent thousands of pounds, many thousands.
You can't have 10,000.
Well, all right,
that would be like. I'd have to do the maths on that, but that's like £3 million worth of plugins.
No, maybe I'm exaggerating then. I am exaggerating.
Maybe a little bit,
but thousands for sure.
Yeah,
I know I've bought I've definitely bought thousands. I know that, even little tiny things. But maybe not 5 figures. But the point is this. I now use, like you've asked me to count on 2 hands, easy. On every single channel, because I've got controllers. We've spoken about this before. I use one plugin, and it's called the SSL 4KB channel strip.
Yeah.
Okay. That is, I can't live without that. That's my EQ, my compression, everything. That is it. That's one. I use only on my bass. I use Soothe. No, not only actually, but I use it on my bass. And the way I use Soothe is I want to make sure that my kick and my bass aren't clashing. So I'm basically side chaining.
Yeah.
I use another plugin. So we're on to 3 so far out of the thousands I've bought, called Pure Unmask by Sonable.
That's very good as well.
I recommended you that. That's one that you...
Yeah.
I recommended you Soothe and Pure Unmask.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not a complete waste of time.
And do you know why I was very much, for a long period of time, I was very much against Soothe.
Yeah.
Because it's...
AI.
Well, I wouldn't call it AI, but it's variable.
Yes.
It's following the music. Which I didn't like at the time.
But it changes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I didn't like.
Oh, really?
Because you're not in control of the way it changes.
Right.
But after using it, and I like the fact that it does that.
Yeah, exactly.
Carry on.
So Pure Unmask, I'll pretty much only use that on bass as well, for this very same reason to unmask, the frequencies. And I personally think the two together is great, and you sidechain the kick into them both. It's a huge difference. Particularly, I do a lot of dance music, mixing and mastering and production. So that's 3. Obviously, I use reverb. So my go-to reverb on vocals at the moment is the Oxford reverb. The Sonox. It's very old, but I really do like it, actually. It's not essential to use that particular reverb, but I do very much like it. Made by Paul Frindle. For instruments, I tend to use, and I know you use this, the Cinematic Rooms reverb.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 5. I'll then use a delay, or just mostly on my vocals. I quite like the stock delay that comes with Logic. It's called Echo.
Yeah.
Right, this is 6. Now in my mixes, that's it. I'm using 6 plugins. Now, I master in the box, okay? I've got about 3 or 4 plugins on my master chain. For example, what's that Paul Frindle one that I like? I've told you about before. The DSM. I love the DSM. Incredible. I don't use it in the mix.
So you could pretty much count them on 2
Oh,
hands.
I can. So 7 on my mastering chain. Let's say maximum 10 plugins I'm using. I know you actually use more than me, though. That being said,
but I probably use about 20 plugins.
Okay,
and that's because those 20 plugins I feel are plugins that actually bring something to the table that I haven't got in the analog world.
Yeah.
So they bring something to the table. Now, my issue with plugins is that in a long, long time, it's been a very long time since a plugin came out that I was like, wow, this is a plugin. This is something that got me excited. It's been so long now.
I think I remember the last one, and that was Alkane.
Yeah, that's good. That's the thing with that is a very good plugin if you don't already have analog saturation.
Yeah.
I do like that, and it's I don't use it too much anymore. And the only reason for that is the fact that I've got so much saturation out the box.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I was in the box, that's the saturator I would be using.
Go-to. Would you use it on every channel even?
No, well, saturation isn't even required on every channel.
So more like the bus.
No, just more on selective sounds that need saturation. So it's not like a case of everything has to be saturated, so let's put it on everything just because we can. Now that's a really good plugin. I do like that as a plugin.
And there's another one that I told you about and you really loved. I can't remember what it's called. What was it? It was a similar sort of thing. We'll have to come back to that one. I can't remember, but yeah, I know that very few you get excited about those.
There's hardly anything.
Yeah.
Because the problem with it is too many plugins are just rehashes of other plugins.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really new or inventive that's coming out with certain plugins. Now, there are certain plugins that come out that are they're cool and they're like, but when it comes to an EQ, it's like, if you've got something like Pro Q4, do you need another EQ? Because that kind of does everything. And it's like these other EQs come out and it's like, oh yeah, well, this creates a slightly different curve. It's just like, I can create that curve. All you're offering me is that I can get to that curve a little bit quicker because you have the set curve. Things like that. And there's very little that is coming out nowadays that I think anybody is getting excited about. I know I'm certainly not getting excited about any of it.
I must say, though, a lot of people say in the digital world, in the plugin world, they say an EQ is an EQ. So yes, some like Pro Q4, you can do side, mid-side and things like that, and the dynamic EQ and all that. But a lot of people say it's just ones and zeros, and they're all the same. I don't know if I agree with that. I know it's just the EQ curves, I guess. But I'll give you an example. On my master bus, I do like to use the Oxford, the Sonox EQ, and I tell you what I use it for. Just to give it a bit more crispness.
Yeah.
And I find that's my favourite EQ to get that crispness, which I can't even necessarily get. I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But I can't even get that with the Pro Q4.
Yeah. So
Why?
there's
Why is that, though?
certain EQs will have a sound to them. There'll be, there'll be little touches of saturation, things like that.
Right.
It might be a case of that it's got a lot of third harmonic saturation on there,
Maybe.
and
Maybe.
that's what's giving you that sound. I don't
Yeah.
know, but so yeah, it isn't a case. I guess it's not a case of that one EQ's the same as another EQ, but there's no massive advancement of like, well, why should I go and spend £300 on that EQ when
Yeah.
I've got it in this EQ?
That's right.
It's like if I had no plugins, I've got loads to choose from. Exciting.
Yeah.
But because you already have too many plugins, I've got thousands of plugins, and it's just like nothing new's coming about. Like things like Ozone 11 when they brought out that with so you could split between the kick, the drums, the vocal,
Stems.
and the bass.
Stems
That's brilliant. That got me excited, and mainly because there's times when you're mastering and you only have the stereo mix and the vocals a little bit too quiet, and you can use EQ, mid-side EQ, to bring out the vocal, but this is actually what I would say was game changer in the way that you could do this, because now you could use an EQ to bring out certain frequencies and isolate and be able to actually process the vocals.
It's like stem mastering without having the stems, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a massive advancement that was really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of Ozone itself for its tools, but I'd use it now as a way of I can just catch that kick drum, because say for instance I can switch it to drums, for instance, and if I've got a kick drum that I can't use EQ because I'm also pulling out the bass. Now the bass has got too loud as well with it. So I literally just need to catch that kick drum. So I can use Ozone 11 to just catch the kick drum and it doesn't affect the bass.
Yeah.
And things like that, that's amazing. And that really does help with certain songs where you haven't got the stems and you need to really dive into the kind of stem layer of the mix in order to get the right master out of it. Vocals too loud. Well, there's no problem. In music rebalance, just bring it down. Bring the vocals down a little bit. Rather than what you'd have to do in the past is using an EQ to kind of bring it down. But then the problem is then you're hitting some of the instruments and the bass, and there's all sorts of different things that you're affecting with it.
Ozone's amazing in the sense that you can make vocals louder and softer as well in your master. It's crazy. You know what I use that Ozone for? One of the things, 'cause I do like it. On all my vocal channels, I use that. There's a part of Ozone 11, and it's called density. You familiar with that one? Yeah. And I put that on every vocal, and what it does is, it's not compression. I don't know what it is. Yeah. But it really evens out. Like it's almost like upwards compression. It brings out the quiet vocals.
It's really good.
Like louder.
But those sorts of plugins, they're advancements.
That's right.
They're adding something to what wasn't there already.
That's right.
And I like all that sort of stuff. That sort of stuff is cool.
But you know what? If you think about it, so like I said, my main plugin that I could get away with using only that plugin pretty much is the 4KB channel strip. If you think about it, in the old days, and let's face it, we all love the SSL desks. We all love like £1 million SSL desk or whatever. What did they have? Just the EQ, and they had the analog EQ. So for that same reason, in a way, that's why I'm using the channel strips, the SSL channel strips.
Yeah.
They were limited to that. I'm happy to be limited. I can do anything on that. No, you can't do mid-side. Maybe you can't hone in on certain frequencies if you want to cut out resonances. But as an overall EQ, for me, I don't need anything else other than the SSL, and I don't need any compressors other than the SSL channel strip compressor. If I really wanted to get rid of resonances, I'm going to use Soothe. On my master channel, I don't use that. On my master channel, for EQ, I tell you what I use. I use the Oxford EQ.
Compression.
Oh, for compression, do you know what? What do I use on my master chain for compression?
DSN.
Yes, exactly what I use. Yeah, it is. That's an incredible plugin.
See,
actually.
that is one that's an advancement.
Groundbreaking. And that came out, well, I think so. When did that come out?
God,
years ago.
Yeah, it's quite some time ago.
That is my compressor. I have no other compressor. I've just tried to think about that. Nothing. That's a multi-band. It's more than a multi-band compressor. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but what I do know, when I match the volumes and I bypass what I've done on the DSM, it's, how did I live without it? It just does something magical. That's the genius of Paul Frindle. He doesn't like being called a genius, but...
You are a bit of a fanboy.
I am a fanboy, and I'm fortunate enough I speak to Paul quite regularly, and so I ask him all his little secrets. He's a genius.
Worked on a lot of big
incredible
stuff.
You know, he helped invent the SSL desk, it's a big part of that. He made what was that digital console, the Sony... I can't remember, but you know all your Sonex plugins that you've got, all your EQ, they're all part of that desk. He's done all those. Yeah, he's great. It's great. Nice guy, very helpful guy as well.
Yeah. So
but
go on.
So bottom line is, I'm with you. I think they're boring. They're all the same. Most are inferior. And
I think as well is what you've got nowadays. You've got back in the day when plugins were at its height, let's say, you had very selective plugin developers, and you had kind of quite big budgets in the plugin development. You had like the likes of UAD, even Plugin Alliance.
They were great, yeah.
Even companies like Native Instruments,
UAD.
Yeah, UAD. All these kind of big players in the.
Dare I say Waves?
Yeah, well, Waves, another one. I mean, nothing really great's come from them since.
I've got an issue with Waves.
Oh, don't. We'll go on to that. Yeah. I've got an issue. I've got lots of issues with Waves.
Yeah.
So
I want to tell you my issue. Go on, carry on. I'll tell you after.
Yeah. So what I'm saying in this regards is, you've got all these big companies. You had all these big companies. Now you've got a lot of little companies, and it's very easy. Well, it's not easy. It is difficult to build a plugin, but I've built plugins, and I use them myself. And it's very easy for people to, with a kind of a relatively limited amount of knowledge on how to build plugins. And now you've just got this sea of plugin developers who are just creating plugins. And we don't need another 1176 compressor. We've already got the UAD one. That one was brilliant, right? We don't need another one that's, this one, it sounds one for one like the hardware. Right, okay, well, the UAD one claims that, so we've already got that. Yeah, but this one is now $29. So, right, well, now you've just shot the market in half, and now that's the new price point for that sort of plugin. And then you've got 20 or 30 people doing the same thing with a different looking GUI. So now you've got 20 or 30 1176 style plugins that, some sound okay, some sound terrible, some sound really good. And it's like, now instead of just having the UAD one, which, arguably it's good to have more options, especially ones that are native, when UAD weren't native and you had to buy into their ecosystem in order to use them.
Which I did. I spent absolutely thousands. I probably spent the most with UAD, actually.
Yeah. I think they've destroyed their... I think... I see they had to do it, but they had to take all their plugins, well, the majority of their plugins native, and now they're kind of drip feeding them out. And I feel like they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit, because now their value of their plugins has kind of plummeted.
Yeah, because anyone can buy them. You don't need to buy the... I look at them as giant dongles. The Apollo. I've got the Apollo interface. I love that. But I've also got these two, what are they called, my ones? Satellites. I've got two of those.
Yeah, I've got two.
Yeah, I wouldn't get them again if I was rebuying stuff. They're just
point. I don't... I've got two.
Yeah.
And... Yeah, I don't even use... I've got every single UAD plugin. Every single one.
Yeah.
And I don't use... The only plugin that I use, and I use it native, is the Ampex ATR 102.
Use a native. Why is there any reason for that?
The native one looks a bit better.
Really?
Plus, I've got a super fast Mac Studio, and I don't need to use it off on the DSP. And people would argue, well, if you've got the DSP, you might as well use it off the DSP.
Yeah.
And I don't need to use it off the DSP, and the reason I don't is because the delay compensation, the samples delay on through the satellite box, I think it's about 2,000 samples of delay.
Oh, really?
So by not using it, I think there's 30 samples of delay in comparison.
Oh,
so
really?
I might as well.
Get that. You made natively. I haven't done that.
Oh, yeah, it's
is
well
it free
worth...
once you've bought it originally? It must be.
It was. This is the problem. Is it was a case of that you could just get it for free.
Can you not now?
Well, this was originally they said,
Yeah.
Or they alluded to,
Yeah.
that we're going to bring out native versions.
And if you've paid for it,
and if you've paid for it,
Yeah.
they kind of alluded to that.
Yeah.
But further down the line, it's like, oh yeah, no, it's about £10.
Really?
And I get why. It's to cover the cost.
Yeah.
And just by having a value there, there's.
I don't agree with that. If you paid, you paid.
Yeah, I know, but they'll argue that it's a different version.
Right. Okay.
And what they basically done with the Ampex ATR 102 is it's a slightly upgraded, different version, so it's not identical code. So there's a few little upgrades with it, which are great. So you kind of don't mind paying. But yeah, go on to your waves. Yeah, go on.
I don't get angry, but but this makes me a bit mad. So I spent. Do I want to say maybe thousands even?
Oh, God,
maybe
yeah.
1,000 at least on all the waves plugins, all the waves, and I then changed Macs. So I spent a lot of money.
It was
on
when
my
it
Mac.
was Intel to Mac Silicon.
Correct. So I had a very expensive. I paid about
I got
13
done as well.
grand. Yeah, and then I bought. What did I buy? I think it was the Mac Studio. And I thought, right, okay, obviously I've got to update everything. It's a right palaver updating plugins.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And I updated my plugins. I went to update my plugins on Waves, and it says, "Oh no, you can't do that. You've got to pay." I'm thinking, but I paid. I don't know any other plugins like companies.
Yeah.
Where you pay for even Logic Pro.
Yeah.
You don't pay. They just update for life. I thought that's weird. So I'm contacting like the. I remember this. I actually phoned up the customer services. It was about 3:00 in the morning for me. Because I was up all night in the studio, like installing stuff, and I think they were based in America. The guys that I spoke to, so they were open. And I spoke to one of them, and he's like, "Yeah, you have to pay." And it was a lot of money.
Yeah,
it was a lot because I bought all bundles and things.
Yeah,
and I said,
"But why do you think they wanted you?"
Yeah,
they wanted everyone to buy these bundles at really discounted
prices.
Wasn't
that discounted though? A little bit.
Yeah, well, at the time there was like. A lot of there's a wave sale. It ends next week.
Yeah,
next week. There's a wave sale. It ends next week.
Like MFI furniture back in the day.
There's another wave sale. It ends next week. It's like I thought this sale was meant to end. Okay,
so and I thought no way, but I had to. There were certain Waves plugins at the time that I kind of relied on. Not even I don't want to say relied on, but I'd used them in a lot of client sessions, where they weren't finished, and I had to go back to them.
Yeah,
and I really did need those things. I've had to go and buy. I didn't bother to buy the bundles again, but I had to buy at least 5 or 6 individual Waves plugins again, at least maybe more. And I had to pay whatever I had to pay. I can't remember, but I just thought, what a cheek! What unbelievable!
They lost a lot of people.
I'm not surprised. And you know what? I'm very against pirate plugins. Like I really am. We can maybe talk about that in a minute. Yeah. It's not something I would ever do. But I remember that people would used to get the waves for free, all the waves. And I am against that because stealing it is. But now, after all that, I'm like, well, you know what? Don't blame them in a way, because if they're going to treat you like that,
well, there was the issue as well
Yeah.
with the subscription.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Right. So it wasn't it wasn't a case of, I don't know what was going through their heads at the time. They're absolutely mental to do it. It wasn't a case of, oh, we're going to do a subscription model. Oh, brilliant idea. That's a great. Some people like subscription models. No problem. They turned around and went, yeah, everything's subscription. Well, what about us who have bought everything? Care about you?
Yeah.
And the reason companies want to get everyone on subscription models is because the company value 5x's overnight if you've got a subscription model. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you get everyone on a subscription model, your company value 5 times
Why is that?
its value, because you've got everyone on subscription.
Right.
So they're reoccurring.
Yeah.
Perpetual license. It's like, here's your license. Come back. Hello.
Right.
Come back and buy something.
Yeah.
Whereas subscription, it's like, you ain't going nowhere.
No.
Come back here.
You can't go
Come back
anywhere
here.
because you're using, like I had that situation, you're using all their plugins. If you stop your subscription,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
You don't get to keep. For that reason, I don't know about you, I don't like subscription models.
I don't like subscription models. I'm not a fan of them.
You once, was it Plugin Alliance?
Yeah, I've got the Plugin Alliance one.
Have you still got
But
that?
that's different, right? And I'll
How?
tell you why that's different. I'll tell you how that's different. That subscription model is very good, especially for me, right? And the reason being, I was a very early adopter. So it cost me about 160, 150 pounds
per year.
per year.
Yeah.
But I get a coupon for £250 to buy any of the perpetual licenses I want.
Right.
So it works out, I can go on there with the 250. If I time it right, I can go into when they have a big sale and just go 10 plugins.
Okay.
Got the perpetual license.
So do you own a lot of their plugins because of
I
that?
own literally everything. I could just... the only thing that's keeping me on the subscription is if they bring out plugins in the future
Right.
that I actually want,
Okay.
which, to be honest,
It's unlikely.
is not really happening
No.
because there's nothing there.
Nothing.
The only reason I will maybe stay on the subscription is because they'll bring out plugin emulations of hardware that I've got, and I want to just grab the plugin to do a hardware comparison.
Oh, right.
So that's I don't.
Well, theoretically, if you just want to do that for like a YouTube video, for example,
I could get the demo.
get the demo.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I used to love Plugin Alliance, I must admit. I don't think... I'll tell you what I sometimes use from them. I'd say I own 95% of all their plugins.
Yeah.
I really do. And there's one that I occasionally use called Basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what I use that for sometimes. Let's say a respace, you know, those
Yeah.
like low, long basses. Sometimes...
How does that bass go?
Ooh.
It sounds like a cow.
Ooh. Sometimes I'll use a respace and it sounds great in the studio on my speakers, like amazing. But then when you listen on a mobile phone,
just gives it the upper mid, the lower.
not
mids.
even, it doesn't always come through. It's like it's very difficult. So I found with Basement, it adds upper harmonics.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect it negatively on your speakers, but it all comes through suddenly on your little phone.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting plugin. There's another plugin, I think it was Plugin Alliance, that I used to use. I've not used it for years. I've not even installed it on my latest Mac.
No.
And it was a compressor or an EQ or something, but it took into consideration the pitch of the notes. Does that ring a bell with you? So if your bass notes went like E to A to D or whatever, it would take into consideration those frequencies rather than just EQing or compressing everything the same.
I seem to recall.
I can't remember what it was called, but that was quite interesting.
See, this is the thing: is these are interesting plugins.
Yeah.
These are what actually interests people.
Yeah.
Whereas people are just bringing out, another LA2A, another 1176, another CL1B. It's
Well, I see advertised a lot now AI plugins, and a lot of them do the
are
same
they
thing.
really AI plugins or are they machine learning plugins? Because they're two very different things.
Yeah, a mixture of both. But for example, so we've got Soothe, which is brilliant, actually. I think it's fantastic.
But that's not
Getting that
AI.
It's not AI exactly.
It's machine learning.
It's machine learning. But there's so many sort of clones of Soothe that are a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But they do the same thing, but not as well. I'm guilty of buying a lot of those as well, to be honest. But there's a lot of these, and you know what I see a lot of, and again, I'm guilty of buying them even. I don't know why. I never use them. I see a lot of these 1 knob or 2 knob plugins, particularly mastering chains. Now, like there's a few of them, and they're terrible. I don't know what I've done. I believe the adverts. I don't need them. I can master.
See, the thing is,
but
you're a clever geezer.
Yeah.
But you are getting sucked in on the adverts.
Yeah, I know.
How do you think, like, young producers who are just starting out, they're getting, all of them are just getting sucked in.
I know.
And just getting, they could see them coming. I guarantee you the adverts are targeting certain demographics.
That's
and
right.
It's like, these people aren't clued up enough.
No.
To know that they're just buying the same plugin over and over again in a different skin.
Yeah.
Target those people.
Not even the same. Probably not as good.
Yeah.
Not as good. Why have I fallen for these sometimes? Because really cheap. They're really cheap half the time.
Did a Grammy Award winning engineer ever endorse it?
Yeah, that's
and
another
put their
one.
name to it.
Are we talking about the God particle here?
Oh no, we're not generally. We're talking in a general.
But that's one. That's one. The God particle. Don't get me wrong. It has its uses, but that's another thing. Yeah, the Jason Joshua one. But yeah, that's what it is. When they say Grammy Award engineers love this, it's their only plugin. There's like Andrew Sheps. There's a few. It does entice you. It entices you. And my reason for sometimes getting those is not to use instead of what I'm using, but maybe that's a good tool in my arsenal of plugins. Yeah. But actually, it's clutter. It's clutter. It's like me having in this studio a million mics that I'll never, ever, ever use. I'll just use my one good one, which I do. That's what I've got, one mic. It's a similar kind of scenario.
It's nice to have them.
Well, is it even?
It's nice. I mean, you're not going to say no to having various different mics and just kind of like, maybe that singer will sound better through that. Maybe. It's nice to have, but plugins, they are just, a lot of them are just clutter. Yeah. And they do clutter up. And
clutter
just
up your hard drive,
Yeah. And I really think there's not a massive amount of difference between one EQ and another EQ. I don't think there's too much in the way of differences. No. Not enough in the way of differences to warrant paying another £300 for a different plugin. Yeah. And then you're far better off. I feel you're far better off having one EQ, for instance, or one compressor that you know inside and out. Mm-hmm. You know, like something like a prime example's a compressor like Pro C2 Fab Filter.
Great compressor,
yeah. So you can switch between all the different modes, opto compressor. I think there's just like clean version, this version, mastering. You've got all these different settings and modes.
Yeah.
You can select. So you can kind of do pretty much every style of compression with that. And it's a brilliant compressor. It does sound genuinely good. So why do you need another compressor that doesn't do all of those modes, but does, let's say, it does an opto. It's an opto compressor. It's like, you've got an opto compressor in there. Why would you spend another £200 on this little opto compressor? Oh, because it's a plug-in emulation of a Shadow Hills opto compressor. It's like, yeah, but it still fundamentally does the same thing as the Fab Filter Pro C2.
Not only that.
But it looks good.
Yeah, it looks good, but who cares? No one sees it. Apart from us.
It's nice to use. Look, it's nice to use these plugins.
I've got a question for you. Not so much a question, but see if you agree with me. I'm no longer a fan of plugins that are trying to emulate hardware.
Oh, I just done a video on this.
Did you?
Yeah.
Right, I'll have to watch
I hate it. I hate them. Because the thing with it is plugins that emulate hardware.
Yeah.
I find that the plugin itself, because it's trying to emulate hardware, it's limiting itself in its ability.
Correct.
So what you're doing is, let's say you've got a SPL PQ, doesn't have shelves. That's not a limitation of a plugin. The plugin isn't limited to not having shelves. Whereas that plugin could have had the option to change the high to a high and low shelf.
Yeah.
Because and people will argue, oh well, I'm using that plugin in order to get that sound. It's like, yeah, but it's physically limiting itself.
That's right.
In its ability. It doesn't have a frequency analyzer, for instance. That's great to have.
Yeah.
It's lovely to have that.
Exactly.
And,
or mid-side, let's say.
Yeah, or mid-side, yeah.
Another thing, though, I don't like plugins that, for example, sound degraded to try and emulate some hardware. Like, okay, let me try and give you an example. Maybe, for example, even the ATR 102, you can add hiss.
Oh, yeah.
Why would you want to add hiss? Like back in the day, everyone did everything they could possibly do to
remove
take out hiss.
They still are.
They still are. Well, they had the tape machines, the physical tape machines.
I mean, that for me is more of a gimmick.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. In certain productions, maybe like old R&B productions, I get that. I wouldn't now these days, but I get you might want to add a little vinyl crackle,
a little bit
as part of the production. But to emulate like hiss and just like
that's to keep it authentic to the real thing.
I mean, I get that, but
but you want clean. I can't say I've ever gone onto the ATR 102 and gone,
I'll turn it off.
Hiss on.
Yeah.
At default,
I think default is on.
Yeah, default it's on.
Yeah.
But my default that I've set up
and mine
off.
Well, I don't use it anymore. Maybe I should start using that. I forgot.
It's worth using. It's really good. Yeah.
Maybe on the master. Do you reckon?
No, just on every bus.
Really?
Or every channel.
Do you use a tape emulation on the master, by the way?
No, not in the master.
Okay.
No.
But doesn't that make sense? Because in the old days, people would record their pre-master onto tape and then master that.
I'm not a fan of it, personally.
I mean, I don't either. For me, the DSM does everything I want to sound sort of analogish, you know. But well, look, I'm glad we agree on something, and which is
I think we agree. Plugins bore me to tears at the moment, and I hope that changes. I do hope that changes. I genuinely hope that things change and they get a little bit more exciting with plugins, because at the moment they're just. I just feel it's all just same, and it's very little. That's come out in the last 5 years. Probably count on one hand. 5 plugins that have come out in the last 5 years. That I've actually gone, oh yeah, this is really good.
And synths are different. You're not a producer so much as me, but synths, even those actually, like, you know, but generally software instruments are pretty incredible actually. Because my studio, I used to have loads of analog synths and like so much hardware. I've got rid of all that.
I prefer, if I was producing, I prefer to use plug-in synths instruments.
Don't get me wrong. It's a palaver. It's a hassle having all hardware because you've got to patch it all in and everything. Don't get me wrong. They're fun, but very much in the way of like with controllers, controlling EQs and things. I suppose if you've got like a controller that you can control, like the Arturia, I don't know if you're familiar with those, they're pretty brilliant. You know, they're pretty amazing. And so, yeah, when it comes to synths, I do enjoy plugins. Again, not millions of them, even though I've got millions of them. Very few. But overall, bored. Let's see what happens.
We can agree on that.
Brilliant. All right. Nice one, Paul.